Alright, so I did a video a few weeks ago that was just for the boys. It was about South Korean military conscription and idol enlistment scandals. I'll link it in the description and above. So I wanted to do this video just for my gal pals. Recently, I watched a video by the great YouTube channel For Harriet titled WAP and the Spectacle of Sexual Liberation. While the video discusses several aspects of feminism and sexual liberation that are specific to Black women in America, there were several points she makes in the video that made me think a lot about K-pop girl groups and their supposedly empowering girl crush concepts. It's also quite relevant because a lot of these girl crush concepts pull from the badass Black woman performance we see in the West. I'll play a few of her points that made me think the most, but I highly suggest watching her whole video. It's really fascinating and made me think differently about how I consume popular culture.
I don't know why people feel the need to map empowerment onto everything they enjoy to excuse their enjoyment of it. It is really weird to me that so many of the images that we elevate as being the epitome of empowerment look exactly like images that come out of the male imagination. We have reclaimed these things without questioning them. Are we saying that the things that come most naturally to us, the things that make us feel the best, look and feel exactly like the things that men like the best? The things that they find the most titillating?
This led me down a rabbit hole of research where I found out other people have been thinking along the same lines as me, but applying it a bit differently. So in this video, I want to discuss girl boss type feminism, K-pop girl crush concepts, and how they intersect in this strange place that leaves any supposed female empowerment feeling kinda hollow. I'm going to be talking about Blackpink a lot in this video, partly because they're a popular group and as a YouTuber TM, I am always looking for views, but also because they're the most popular girl group who has kind of just made their career with these badass girl crush kind of concepts. I also see Blackpink fans calling their concepts and image feminist or empowering pretty regularly. Even one of Blackpink's own taglines is,
"Blackpink is the revolution."
But what are they revolutionizing exactly? This question has plagued me for years now. All of these takes don't really hold water to me, and I'm using this video to work through my thoughts on exactly why that is. I know some Blackpink fans watching this right now are going to think I'm a Blackpink hater. They might even be in the comments right now saying that exact same thing. But this really isn't true. I think Blinks and I actually agree a lot more than they realize, because what I actually am a hater of is YG Entertainment, and specifically how they treat their female artists. So if you'll bear with me for a minute, I'd like to introduce a new segment I'm calling the I Hate YG Corner. So just off the top of my head, remember how YG, the former CEO, sabotaged his wife's idol career because he wanted to marry her? The entire ongoing Burning Sun scandal from 2019? Remember how he constantly told 21 they were ugly and needed plastic surgery? Remember how he called Blackpink the prettier 21, implying the most important thing about women is how pretty they are? Remember how he wouldn't let Blackpink write any of their own songs despite putting tons of resources into teaching their male idols how to write and produce songs? The sexism really jumped out there. So when I'm complaining about Blackpink or some other group, I'm more complaining about their management and record label, because they're the ones mostly responsible for creating this whole badass image. Especially you, YG. But for shorthand, I'll be saying Blackpink or 21 or whatever group I happen to be talking about. Just know that I'm also talking about their whole management and company. Okay, so there's way more to unpack here with just YG, but I think I got the YG hate out of my system for now. Tune in next week for the next segment. I have some problems with SM Entertainment. To start the actual video, we'll need to answer the question, what exactly is a girl crush concept? To start with, journalist Caitlin Kelly gives a pretty good explanation of the girl crush concept as it relates to K-pop. Defining K-pop's version of girl crush presents a logistical challenge because it has such a dynamic meaning. The term could refer to a group's overarching concept, think girl group powerhouse 21, a more ephemeral song concept, like Girls' Generation's sassy kiss-off You Think, or even an individual girl group member, like Twice's short-haired Jonghyun. There isn't really a specific sound to girl crush. It functions more as a descriptor of both visuals and message, to varying degrees. As with the Western counterpart of the term, the romantic implications of the word crush tend to be overlooked, veering into the gal pals variety of LGBTQ erasure. Still, a song will hardly qualify for the label if it sounds too cute and bubblegum. The concept goes harder as idols morph into badass, tomboyish, and occasionally sexy women, but it often boils down to you know it when you see it. There are the usual sartorial signifiers: sports jerseys, fishnets, menswears, Doc Martens, and dark color schemes. Basically, anything that conveys the image of ferocity, stepping outside the expectations of hyper-femininity. This is obviously quite a vague definition to try to use in any meaningful way. But in my research, I came across an academic article that, in my opinion, uses a much better term than girl crush to describe these concepts. Feminist scholars Jiun Lee and Hyang-soo Ni use the term Ssen-unni to refer to this type of image in K-pop. Ssen-unni literally translates to strong older sister. This is usually pretty easy to identify. Think of Boa's Girls on Top, 21's I Am the Best, CL's The Baddest Female.
This is for all my bad girls around the world. Not bad meaning bad, but bad meaning good, you know.
Almost all of Blackpink's songs.
Look at you, now look at me, how you like that?
Or Jessie's Ssen-unni.
They call me Ssen-unni. She just Ssen-unni.
Huh. Maybe Jessie is actually a philosopher and a scholar, and that song is actually an article abstract. Wild. Also, just a side note here, when I first heard CL say G-I-Z-to-the-I-B-E over half a decade ago, wow, I am old, I was so confused. I was like, Jizibe? Well, alright CL. But this article actually explains it's supposed to be a romanization of yijibe, which is a colloquial term to describe girls and young women. Now you know. Now that we know roughly what a girl crush or Ssen-unni concept is, let's discuss some of the strange contradictions involved in these supposedly feminist images. Lee and Yi note that K-pop girl groups are using this Ssen-unni concept to fight the normalized idea of weak femininity that claims all women should be docile, pure, and innocent. And this is one really good thing about these types of concepts, especially in South Korea. It helps to normalize the idea that there is more than one acceptable way to be a woman. However, when groups use this strong femininity Ssen-unni concept, these performances actually insinuate the underlying message that power is derived from what society views as masculine, reaffirming patriarchal and hierarchical perceptions. This conflated notion of Ssen-unni utilizes images of women physically overpowering men or imitating hypermasculine mannerisms, wearing male-identified clothing, and using objects such as baseball bats and machine guns, all symbols of masculinity.
Rambo.
But not all of the Ssen-unni concept is dedicated to dunking on men or calling all men trash. In fact, a large part of the concept explicitly does the opposite. The shift of the female gaze from male to female performers is rather ironical and conflicted in the way that many singers in their Ssen-unni performances disclose their rebelliousness by incorporating sexualized female stylistics, mini skirts, high-heeled shoes, perfect hair and makeup, highly sensuous dance movements, and overtly sexual lyrics.
Hey boy.
In music video narratives, these elements usually purport to tease a male target, creating the very attractive images of women specifically for the male gaze in the audience. On the one hand, it distances the male gaze by performing outside of the cherished patriarchal feminine norms. On the other, it highlights a sexualized connotation to re-invite the male gaze. This unveils Ssen-unni's inherent contradiction, that the image of the strong sister embodies women artists' fear of losing male fans while simultaneously attracting female fans to the message of women's empowerment. By explicitly seeking male attention and upholding restrictive traditional beauty standards for women, the performance of Ssen-unni concepts do not in any way disrupt a patriarchal capitalism that entraps women in a society of consumerism and sexism, but pass down the restricted view of empowerment to the next generation of women. This quote will be extremely relevant as we move forward, so keep it in the back of your mind. Next, I want to take a detour for a bit to discuss the recent-ish phenomenon of girl boss feminism, or corporate feminism as it's sometimes called. Don't worry, I promise this will be relevant as we move forward, so just bear with me for a bit. If you're totally unfamiliar with this concept, the YouTuber Jordan Teresa made a great comprehensive video explaining the whole girl boss phenomenon that I'll link to above and in the description. And it's very hard for me to say a girl boss without that voice because it's just so heavily associated with MLMs at this point. So the whole idea of a girl boss was extremely related to the idea of lean-in feminism, which is based on the book Lean In: Women, Work, and the Will to Lead, written by Sheryl Sandberg, the COO of Facebook in 2013. This book was highly criticized for being an extremely shallow type of feminism, essentially telling women, you're just not trying hard enough. It doesn't matter if the system is rigged against you, you just need to lean in and work harder. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
원하던 대놓고 뺐지 너무래도 칼로 무배기 두 손엔 가득한 fat chicks 궁금하면 never fact check.
So I just want to share with you this great review I found on the wiki page for the book because it really gets at the essence of lean-in feminism. In 2015, software engineer Kate Huddleston commented, "Women in tech are the canary in the coal mine. Normally when the canary in the coal mine starts dying, you know the environment is toxic and you should get the hell out. Instead, the tech industry is looking at the canary, wondering why it can't breathe, saying, 'Lean in, canary, lean in.' When one canary dies, they get a new one because getting more canaries is how you fix the lack of canaries, right? Except the problem is that there isn't enough oxygen in the coal mine, not that there are too few canaries." Girl boss feminism has very similar problems to lean-in feminism. Girl boss feminism celebrates any woman in a position of power, heralding them as feminist even if they still enact policies that exploit or harm women just like their male counterparts. It doesn't question why these hierarchies that place certain women in positions of power exist in the first place, when one major reason is that there is patriarchy and capitalism. By climbing the hierarchy using the same methods as the men who usually dominate it, you are simultaneously validating the hierarchy's existence and reinforcing the rules of the game as fair. As such, girl boss feminism begs the question, are you really a feminist if you do the exact same exploitative things men do to gain power, just to continue exploiting other women? Do I really care if my boss is a woman or a man when they fire me for taking too much maternity leave? Why is something feminist just because a woman does it, especially if they are perpetuating harmful hierarchies? Perhaps you've started to make some connections to Ssen-unni concepts, but now I'll start outlining some of the connections that I've made. While Ssen-unni concepts play a useful role in presenting another way to be a woman outside of the hegemonic ideal of cute, innocent, and pure, the alternative Ssen-unni concepts present is rather stark. Adopt masculine posturing and attitudes, sort of like a if you can't beat 'em, join 'em mentality. But the problem with this alternative is that it doesn't actually overturn this patriarchal hierarchy or liberate women at all. It is still prizing masculine roles and norms over feminine ones. These concepts are very much not like other girls. This is the same problem with lean-in and girl boss feminism. It asks women to become like the ruthless male CEOs that exploit and oppress their workers, rather than imagining a new way to uplift women outside of just being more like the men who oppress you. So, like the problems with girl boss feminism, if the empowerment of Ssen-unni concepts can only be demonstrated via the polarization of male versus female in materialistic, hyper-masculine ways through consumption, or as inconclusive rebelliousness,
Blackpink is the revolution.
then the meaning of empowerment certainly becomes abstruse. I also had to Google what abstruse means. It means obscure, difficult to understand, much like this word. Additionally, the lyrics of a lot of these songs involve bragging about one's success and achieving one's goals, or how savage one is. But as some scholars point out, in a therapeutic narrative of overcoming obstacles and achieving goals, K-pop videos deliver a hegemonic message that individuals have to be responsible for their success and well-being, rather than blaming external institutional conditions. While ostensibly promoting female empowerment, the videos update and reinforce patriarchal gender norms and expectations.
Look at you, now look at me, how you like that?
These patriarchal gender norms aren't just upheld in the attitudes Ssen-unni girl groups embody. Ssen-unni concepts also uphold the expectation that women need to wear perfect makeup, have perfect hair, wear mini skirts and high heels, and generally fit the conventional idea of what's hot. It's really important to consider why this specific brand of female empowerment is successful over any other kind. For example, why wasn't the empowering new girl crush concept about not wearing makeup, not shaving your legs, and wearing baggy clothing? Is it because, possibly, this concept wouldn't appeal to men and sell? Recall this quote from earlier that I told you to keep in mind. Ssen-unni concepts do not in any way disrupt a patriarchal capitalism that entraps women in a society of consumerism and sexism, but pass down the restricted view of empowerment to the next generation of women. This quote becomes especially relevant when you also remember that the majority of people involved in creating Blackpink and other girl crush concepts are men. The management at the company, the chief creative directors, the songwriters, the directors, the vast majority of people in decision-making positions are men. Why are men the ones deciding what is empowering for women? The only girl groups I know of that have some amount of say in their creative process, even if sometimes it's quite minimal, are 21, G-Idol, Mamamoo, and EXID. But obviously, I don't know everything about every group. The point is, the vast majority of girl groups don't have any say, and that's a problem. As For Harriet mentioned in her video on WAP,
These are albums produced by men, careers created by men, images created by men. And we're not going to talk about the kind of coercion that's involved there?
in conclusion, I'm not here to tell you that these girl groups are bad and #canceled and you're not allowed to enjoy them anymore. I mean, I'm a huge sucker for these girl crush concepts myself. I must admit, I kind of love Teddy-produced songs. I just want to make the point that For Harriet made at the beginning of her video, that just because you enjoy something doesn't mean it's empowering. These are two separate concepts. Something can be tons of fun and make you feel good personally, but it's not necessarily supporting a tangible feminist agenda of empowerment. Honestly, when fans try to use the language of feminism for every girl group, calling them feminist icons, it really does seem the purpose is less to actually push a feminist ideal, but instead to prevent anyone from critiquing them. Because if you critique a feminist icon, aren't you actually the misogynist? I also think that fans intentionally try to push the idea that these idols and their images are being exploited by powerful men to the back of their mind. Because when you start to think about that and then consider how the market works, we have to think about our position as consumers and how we fit into all of this. Although I must note here, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. We live in a society. So yeah, you can still be a Blackpink stan while understanding that they aren't necessarily feminist icons or
The revolution.
Honestly, since the K-pop system and Korean society more broadly is so deeply embedded within these patriarchal capitalist systems, I'm not even sure how a girl group, or a boy group for that matter, would actually become a true feminist icon, or what that would even look like. I think maybe Mamamoo or Hyuna is the closest we have at the moment, but even they aren't totally free of this baggage. They still feel required to wear makeup and look hot 24/7. So, to be clear, I don't condone dragging people for enjoying girl groups because they aren't feminist enough. That would mean boycotting all girl groups, which literally seems like the least feminist thing imaginable. I mean, even baby steps are important at this stage. I do think that girl groups becoming more involved in their own production through songwriting, concepts, or styling is a hugely necessary first step towards girl groups eventually being able to act as feminists with less of an asterisk, though. I don't really have any bigger conclusions than this. Like I said, this video is mainly me working through my thoughts about why these girl crush concepts feel like such empty empowerment. I'm curious to see if you all agree with me or have any new points I haven't thought of that you can put in the comments below. But please be nice, I'm fragile. If you want more analytical girl group content, I've made a video on the Jui incident, and I also have a playlist of all my academic K-pop analyses listed on the screen right now. Please consider subscribing to my channel and following me on social media if you like this video. Other than that, thanks for watching, bye!